Oh, hi, everybody. Are we live? You can bring your shirt.
Yeah, it's saying live. We are live.
We are live. Okay, so I am with two Mandys. One Mandy here in front of the camera has created this beautiful book, Wholesome Child. We are going to be discussing starting solids. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you
It's
for
your first
having me.
Instagram live.
So it's my first live. Hello, everybody.
There's lots of people joining.
And be kind, it's her first live. No, they're really nice all the time. And behind the scenes is another Mandy who's going to be reading out your questions and throwing in many of her own. I want to give you this, Mandy, because I think it might be easier for you. Oh, turn the volume down. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
We are encouraging everyone to have a chat with us. But I want to start by just saying thank you for helping, because this has been a really scary stage for me. I find the purees and part of the solids really quite fine, but we're now into baby-led weaning and spent a whole day of just fox gagging and really struggling. So I'm sure we are not alone. Everybody out there having their own little moments.
Yeah.
So it's such a big topic.
Yeah.
Shall we start with when to start solids?
Yeah. So the guidelines are sort of under revision. So the time to start solids is anywhere between 4 to 6 months. But every child is unique, and we can't really say when the ideal time is. I always say to mothers, tune into your baby and kind of get an idea of when they are ready. So there's some interesting and easy signs to look at. So they will be showing an interest in food.
Fox is doing that very early.
Yeah. So you'll go to a cafe and your baby will not be interested at all in what you're eating. And then suddenly you'll go with your girlfriends and you'll just see your baby staring at you and trying to reach over for what you're eating, for example. And then you can see that they're starting to show interest.
Okay.
So that's a big sign that they're ready for solids.
So then how come I also want to say, we're doing a giveaway. I forgot that part. Okay, so our beautiful friends at Munchkin are going to be giving you a starting solids set, which will include lots of things we're going to show you throughout today. Mandy's going to generously give you her book and a consultation, I think, on the phone.
And that can be over the phone, or Skype, so wherever you are, I'm happy to organise an introducing solids consultation.
Yeah, so huge. So we'll pick the best question, I guess, at the end, and we'll keep reminding those who come in. Mandy, stop us if we've got lots of questions.
Everyone's excited about the giveaway.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, as you say, they can start being interested, and people can choose baby-led weaning from the beginning, or puree.
So let's go back to the appropriate time to start. So as we said, baby's interested in food, they're looking at you, they're wanting to eat what you're eating, but also they have to have that good head and neck control. So when you hear about tummy time, it's a really important thing to do, because that's the best way to start to strengthen that neck control.
We've got a question from Couture Wedding Planning. They'd like to know, what puree should we start on?
Okay, so going to the purees, I'll get to that in a second.
All hold your horses. To finish this point.
So coming back to purees or baby-led weaning. Okay.
Yes.
So
let's explain also what
they
puree
are.
is. A blended, very fine mix of food.
And you'd often serve that to your baby with a spoon. So you are actually in control of the spoon. And if you are going to go down that puree route, which many people do, I would always advise to have a spoon for your baby as well.
Right,
to hold and explore. So because what's going to happen is you're going to have a red shiny spoon or an orange spoon, and you're going to dip it in the food. First thing they're going to do is want to reach out and grab that spoon. And this is meant to be a fun, enjoyable experience. So you want to give them that spoon, and then you have another one. So while they, looking at their spoon, you've got another one, and it's a shared joint experience.
I'm doing things wrong already.
There is no wrong. So, I always say, whenever you've got an expert or someone telling you or giving you advice, as mothers, we've always got to come back to our intuition and take on board the advice that feels right for you and your family.
Yeah.
And the last thing any of us parents want to do, and I do it all the time, is feel guilty, because we're never going to get any stage 100% right.
Yes.
And there is no right or perfect. It's
And that's
just,
where you come in, is to tell us what to do.
and you know, take on board what feels right for you and what you can manage. So coming back to purees, that's the puree, introducing with those pureed foods. But there's another way to introduce foods to your baby, and that's called baby-led weaning, or just by offering finger foods. And that means that basically your baby is leading their journey, and all they're doing is getting finger foods. And in the beginning, most likely they'll just be exploring, mashing, squeezing, throwing on the floor, but they're exploring this process of eating on their own, and you know, there's fun, enjoyment, but not a lot goes actually in. So you have to keep up your milk feeds. Now,
All purees after?
all purees. But here's the thing, you know, in my opinion, and the Wholesome Child approach is to do both.
Yeah.
You start with puree. If you're going to start introducing solids before 6 months, I'd always advise to go for purees, because generally they don't have that head and neck control perfected. So we'd start with purees, and then from 6 months onwards, I would then be advising to offer some component of a finger food. If you are determined and you know want to go down the finger food or baby-led weaning way only, then I would really advise to use something like a broccoli or a dipper in a meat puree, so they're still getting those iron-rich foods.
We have a broccoli trauma. We started. I thought, because I was actually on the phone to Jen from What Baby, and she was like, "It's really time to start with some finger foods," and I was like, "Yes." She's like, "Just grab, you know, some really well blanched broccoli and just put it on this tray and let him explore." And so, and I'm not, Benji's over here, I'm not throwing you under the bus. I'm just going to tell the truth. Is we gave the piece of broccoli, and Benj, there's no shame in this, pulled a piece of the broccoli off and put it in his mouth, and then the whole situation went downhill. There was a lot of gagging. We'd given him a full puree feed first. You know those little balls at the end of the broccoli had come into the back of his throat, and he was gagging and was so confused and gagging so much that he projectile vomited his whole feed up.
So there's a few things. First of all,
We don't put the food in his mouth.
Yeah, you don't put, so baby-led weaning, the whole purpose is your baby leads the way. And as we spoke about earlier, we do get a little
Lead.
bit,
See the lead in the baby lead.
yes,
Got
it's
it.
not parent-led weaning.
Not
But,
baby Benji put broccoli in his mouth, weaning.
They don't talk.
but here's the thing, okay?
They don't talk.
Sorry.
They don't talk.
He's telling me to shut up.
Okay. So there's two things. First of all, as we said, you let your baby kind of control it, but I would advise softly steamed. So blanched wouldn't be soft enough. It would still be too firm and not cooked through. So when you give those vegetables like cauliflower, broccoli, or green beans or zucchini, you really want it to be soft, just before it's about to fall apart. That's
Just
the right
before,
consistency. So some good baby-led weaning foods to start off with would be your baked or steamed vegetables. So sweet potato, pumpkin, baked or steamed. So there's two ways.
Wouldn't baked be hard though?
Okay, so let me tell you, I once had a client, and if you watch it, hi. But she really hated cutting and peeling veggies. So she always would go to the supermarket and buy the pre-cut.
Yes.
And, you know, and she just, that was her thing. She didn't want to cut and peel vegetables. So we devised a method for her to take a whole sweet potato or a whole pumpkin and bake it. And then once it's been baked at about 200 Celsius for, you know, an hour or so until it's really soft, you just scoop out the flesh and puree it. So there's no peeling and there's no cutting. And that worked for her. So like everybody's got to find what works for them. But you can bake. So in my workshop, my Introducing Solids workshop, I go through different methods. But the two best methods for preparing your vegetables or for steaming is, for preparing vegetables, is either your steaming or your baking, and I would definitely avoid boiling because you lose the nutrients.
Got it.
So,
Shall we take a question?
yes, back
On
to the
purees?
one. So
What was the question?
What puree should we start on? Like what vegetables?
Puree. Okay,
Yeah.
so, but also, I think it's really important to start this conversation by saying most people will say rice cereal
Yes.
or a rice porridge or something, and
The doctors,
So
yeah,
the
the
good news-
the
pediatricians.
pediatricians.
Yeah.
Okay, so the good news is that it's changing. When I started the Introducing workshops about 7 years ago, I'd say to the audience, so who's been told that we need to start on rice cereal? And every single hand would go up. Now, that's not the case. I would say a third now say rice cereal and 2/3 say vegetables. And a lot of the pediatricians, a lot of the leading pediatricians and pediatricians that I work with, they 100% advocate starting with vegetables. So if we think about it, okay, we have a serious issue with obesity, type 2 diabetes in children, and if you can make only one change in your diet, only one, that would be swapping from refined carbohydrates to whole grains.
Right.
So then I ask you, why
Would
would
you
you
give
start
your
with the
baby
rice
one?
cereal?
In our experience, it
Yeah.
went down a treat because
Yeah.
it's very bland. It's just kind of the next step from breast milk,
Yeah.
but it constipated Fox so badly that I had to then do the other end of the spectrum and find everything possible to undo it.
So
So he hasn't been on
yeah.
any grains since.
Okay.
We can talk
so
about
we
that.
can talk about when it's appropriate to introduce grains, but just coming back to that rice cereal. So if it's white rice, it's been stripped of the fiber and then synthetic iron has been added to it. Now we know that iron supplements are generally constipating, so I'm not surprised that he would have been constipated. So
And that
as
was
I showed-
organic. That was an organic brand too.
Yeah.
So
And as I showed you, there are a lot of cereals. We won't talk about brands. You can come to a workshop and I'll show you the brands, but that has sugar in it. So some of them have something called maltodextrin added to them, and that's a hidden name for sugar.
Sugar.
So we definitely don't want that going into our baby's guts and, interfering with that gut flora and that balance.
So when you say what puree should you start with, lots of people say avo and banana, but two things there. Avo can be allergenic and banana can be constipating.
Well, they can both be very constipating. So,
what would you say?
I would always recommend starting with sweet root vegetables. So
Sweet potato.
sweet potato, pumpkin, and then moving quite quickly onto things like zucchini and carrot and green beans, and then going on to your broccoli and cauliflower. Like, I'm a huge, huge advocate of introducing as many vegetables as possible. And I'd just like to stick on this point for a second because I also do a fussy eating workshop, and the majority of
Sure, that's
parents,
sold out.
and what is the food group that all of these kids are rejecting? Well, not all, but
Grains.
most of them. Vegetables.
Oh.
So studies, latest research has shown us that only 1 in 5 Australian children are eating the recommended amount of veggies. And what generally happens with parents is they introduce 4 vegetables: sweet potato, pumpkin, and maybe carrots. Their kids are now, their babies are now eating vegetables. But then when they hit 18 months or 2 years and they start to become fussy, and unfortunately it is a stage that most of them are going to go through, those amounts of vegetables start to get rejected. So if you've only introduced 5 or 6 or 7 different vegetables,
You end up with two. Yeah.
and that's what happens. I say introduce the widest range and look at your own diet, because a lot of adults say, yeah, I eat plenty of vegetables, but then when I investigate or I inquire or we start to discuss it, yeah, I eat peas, it's the same thing. I only
We kind of eat the same
ones
five
day
or
in,
something.
day out.
Yeah.
So, in the vegetable section in the book, I have a table where I list all the different vegetables and how to offer them to children. So we're actually starting this broad foundation, so it's in the 3rd chapter.
Thank you.
How to get them to eat more veggies. So we're starting this broad foundation of having vegetables in their diet. So I'd always start with veggies, and even when you introduce protein and grains, keep on building up that repertory. If they've never tasted a squash before, mushrooms, artichoke, asparagus, beetroot, great vegetables.
Can you baby-led wean all of those?
You can, because you would softly steam or bake or you'd add it to a risole or a stew. I mean, we do like to give babies an opportunity to experience the flavour of all these new vegetables, on its own in a visible form. But you can also add beetroot, for example, to my delicious beetroot bliss balls, which are
You talked
perfect
about
for
this.
babies.
Is that a time-consuming thing?
I have to tell you, and this is honestly the truth, that so many of these recipes in this book I created for Erin, my first child. At
I
time
need
per
to
month,
just pause us because the dishwasher is so loud.
Should I turn it off?
Please hold. I'll do it. Please hold that thought. Or please continue.
so we'll have maybe there's
A question. There's Christina here. She'd like some strategies. She's got a 9.5-month-old who has been breastfed exclusively but won't touch any food. And it's very stressful for her.
So by 9.5 months, baby's not starting to take to food, that's when I would advise to check in with a feeding specialist, because we would by 9.5 months want her baby to start to show interest in food. We'd want to make sure that they're the necessary skills to eat that food, and there may need to be some exploration or investigation just to rule out, any sensory or oral motor delays. Sometimes when we are breastfeeding, especially if we're breastfeeding on demand, our babies aren't hungry because they're still loving the milk and it's a comfort. So we'd need to really, there is no one answer. We'd have to look at the case specifically and work out what is actually going on. So I would suggest checking in with your pediatrician, your GP, or making an appointment to see some feeding specialist.
Yep. Great.
Do you want to pick up, or do you want another question? I'm sure they're coming in.
Yeah, coming hot. So, Miss KLO. So, my baby is struggling with wind. She is currently mixed fed at 4 months. Would you say that introducing solids might help this with the wind?
So it can definitely help wind, because some babies find it hard. The milk protein or the lactose in milk can cause the wind. But if she's breastfeeding as well, she could look at you could look at your own diet and remove dairy. Sometimes they're allergens. Things like cauliflower, broccoli, cabbage can cause wind. And we'd have to start seeing if there's some kind of food allergies, but it really can improve. So some babies, especially refluxy babies or colicky babies, they actually do better on solids.
Because then there's no...
It absorbs the acidity.
Yeah. And some babies are just sensitive. Dairy is not an easy one for a lot of, even if it's formula or breast milk, some babies can react and it can cause wind. And we'd have to look at the mother's diet and see if we need to remove some things from her diet, or look for some kind of intolerances there. But with babies who are suffering from wind, a few easy suggestions. I love massage. So massaging the stomach
and constipation.
Exactly. And also doing bicycle legs. So the secret is to get that wind out before sleep, because if your baby's got wind, you are the one that's going to suffer through the night, right? So you want to get it out and make sure.
You know what I heard as well for constipation? There's so many old wives' tales, but a Q-tip in the bottom.
Oh,
that's an interesting one.
And it will
stimulate
but it literally spurts out. You need to watch out.
Okay.
Don't try that without checking with your doctor first.
So Zoe, I'm going to give you another option if you don't want to put the Q-tip up your baby's bum. Then there is the apricot and cinnamon compote, which is in the book.
Maybe try that first.
Try both.
Right.
And I have a lot of clients who their babies suffer from constipation, and this is my go-to before you try anything else. Obviously, if your doctor's recommended you try something and your baby's suffering from severe constipation, you can't just take my advice and stop what your doctor's given you. But for anyone who's got low-grade constipation, or they've just started solids and suddenly their baby who's been pooing regularly is now jammed up, really try that apricot and cinnamon compote, because it really works.
And I also have to say, a lot of GPs, bless them, they're really useful for lots of things, but they'll generally prescribe something straight away, and it's your baby's little system, and it's gut health, and it's tummy, and once you're putting things in there, it's so hard to rebuild it back up. So I think try everything you can naturally.
Natural. So you'd want to, depending on the age of your baby, you'd want to increase their water just a little bit from 6 months. Make sure that they are hydrated.
I was surprised with how much water you said they can tolerate before.
Small amount.
It's really small.
Start with 15 mils. So you put 1 tablespoon in a cup and you start letting them have a little sip on it, experiment with it. Their kidneys cannot handle.
What if they guzzle at it? Like, they love it.
They do love it.
And you have to not let them have it
so
too much?
Up from between 6 to 7 months, I wouldn't be giving them more than 40 mils a day. They still...
I know. I think that Fox might be having more than that.
Harry,
so you just need
Harry
to watch
loves
that,
it.
and it will slowly start to build up. And obviously in the hotter months, they're going to want more, but we just have to watch, not overload.
Or the cooler months with the heaters, and it dries out the air,
True.
Yeah.
And so with constipation, a few things you can do. Number one, getting those vegetables which are full of fiber into your baby is so important. And probiotics.
I use them every day.
Probiotics.
Do you like the Bioceuticals?
I have a few different brands that I like. I love the Bioceuticals, but if severe constipation, or if there's other issues going on, eczema, or histories in the family, I would go for, there are other stronger practitioner ones that I also recommend. So just seeing the baby, the family, and then making the right diagnosis of what probiotic is important. But for the majority of families, the baby biotic is fabulous.
Yeah,
I love it.
perfect.
Yeah.
Another question?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we get through.
Yeah, so Nadia is asking, how do I get my 6.5-month-old to enjoy savoury foods again? She'll only eat sweet fruits and veggies.
Okay, so that's a very good question. Now, I love starting babies on kind of not just sweet foods. If you look at a lot of the processed squeezy packs, they are all sweetened with fruit because it's our baby's natural inclination to enjoy sweet fruits. We all have an affinity for sweet foods. When we were hunters and gatherers, bitter and sour plants and herbs were actually poisonous. So we have to train our babies to enjoy these other flavors. And when we are trying to train babies to adopt new foods or textures, we've spoken about that. It's all about repetition.
Yeah.
Repeat, and don't give up after the fourth go.
Well, I gave up after the first go this morning with the avocado. I go with the first go. So
But you're going to go back to it.
I am. So
Yeah.
do you have to repeat that same thing throughout the day?
No.
Or do you just,
So you could, let's say you do it on a Monday, you could do it on a Wednesday and a Friday. You don't want to bombard your baby with something that they really are showing that.
Okay.
But you know, sometimes I talk about like nuggets. I think the Mandy on the other side of the camera, you were at my workshop, and I kept on saying throughout the workshop, obviously people can't take everything in, but there are a few nuggets that I really like to emphasize. And the number one thing is if your baby rejects something, like in those early days, you're offering a puree, and they reject it. A lot of mothers or parents who are caring for the baby, they run to get the apple puree or the pear puree to sweeten it.
That's what I did today.
And I'd really ask you not to, because then we're just reinforcing that everything needs to taste sweet.
Question then.
Yes.
If Pete, so I made Benji actually cooked some turkey up today, ground it up, and then added that to some zucchini, which you can imagine is probably pretty intense flavour. He hated it and was gagging a lot, but we persevered with him a few more tries and he just hated it, threw up. Bless. And so I went to the freezer and got the pear out straight away. And then I thought, just to kind of get him off that gagging moment, and then we brought in some carrot with the turkey and the zucchini. It still wasn't popular.
Yeah. But when you're adding a little bit of sweetness to meat, so I would always recommend doing sweet potato or carrot, so a sweet root vegetable, you're still not going to take it to that really sweet. You're going to just kind of
take out
if they haven't had meat before,
of it.
you're going to just kind of round out the flavor. But if you take something like broccoli and you add pear puree to it, it's going to taste like pear puree with a hint of broccoli. So I always say never add fruit to vegetables, but add vegetables to whatever you want.
Could you though, because I've heard about having different textures in a bowl.
Yeah.
So you have so you've got your bowl, you've got some chicken, you've got some
Rice?
I haven't got to rice yet, but we can get to that. Some sweet potato and some greens, whatever that is, and then a little bit of pear on the side. Can you go from bit to bit to bit to bit?
You can. I wouldn't have fruit with part of that main meal. It's just, I would always keep fruit. It's good as a snack. It's good as maybe sometimes after dinner. But what would the purpose of that pear? Would that be for them to dip into it, or?
No, that's more just like a option.
An option. So I keep
Like
fruit.
like a fruit veggie meat.
The thing is that with babies, if we start to look at serves and what nutrient intake is, and they need 2 serves of fruit a day. So if we start to introduce fruit with every single meal, and then it's such an easy snack food, you're going to be hitting 5 serves or 4 serves of fruit daily, and it's going to become habitual. So we definitely want 5 serves of vegetables, but keeping fruit at about 2 to 3 serves per day is what we'd be aiming for.
Should babies between 6 and 12 months be having snacks? Or should it just be 3 solids a day?
So what we like to do is we start off, depending on your age of your baby, you'll establish them first on 1 meal. Then you move that up to 2 meals. Then you move that up to 3 meals. I cannot emphasize how important structure is in a little baby's world. And if we can start to really implement those 3 beautiful meals a day, we're doing a good job. Then from about 7 to 8 months, that's when you start to bring in those snacks. Often you'll be dropping a feed, that mid-afternoon feed, or
And
that
that's when you
mid-morning
bring one
food,
in.
and that's when you replace it with a food and a snack, and a healthy snack. So what a healthy, rounded diet for a child should look like: breakfast, mid-morning snack, lunch, mid-afternoon snack, and dinner. Okay? So you do have those 2 snacks, which is what you're working towards. And often when you're at a park or you're on a play date, there will always be fruit. If they're going to daycare at 9:30, they're going to be getting a serve of fruit in those snacks.
Okay.
And as your child becomes older, so with schoolgoers, I often have children who parents want to know what an ideal lunchbox should look like. These kids are given 10 minutes to eat, and if you've got fruit in the lunchbox, for example, what do you think they're going to
go to first?
And then they feel full because it's full of water and fiber, but then half an hour later they're going to be hungry. So I know we kind of went
Around.
but fruit I would say as a snack, and I would be looking more at having as part of a meal vegetables, a protein, slow release carbohydrate, healthy fats.
Question.
Yes.
Question on the healthy fats. How do you get the healthy fats into every meal without using avocado all the time?
Okay, so coconut oil, cooking in
Really?
coconut oil, cooking in extra virgin olive oil, even just drizzling it
drizzling.
over.
Okay.
So when
Already?
Yes, so even when you're starting out with purees, so for example, vegetables,
Yeah.
they are full of minerals which are fat soluble.
Yeah, which
So
activated.
you need
Yeah.
vitamins like A, D, E, etc. You need a fat
To draw it out.
So even putting a little bit of coconut oil or extra virgin olive oil or a little bit of unsalted butter or
Okay.
ghee. So remember, babies need fat. They thrive on fat. So
Even if they look chubby? He is really loving. He's got some cheeks. He's not looking
We
like
we don't talk about babies being chubby. We talk about them being beautiful and healthy and robust.
He's very robust. So
Fat
still
does not equal fat. Fat equals healthy hormone development, satiation, nervous system,
So from
regulation.
what age
So
do you
from
add?
introducing solids, if you look at my menu planner, you got a
Yeah,
menu planner in my introducing solids.
Is that in here?
So the menu planners are in the handouts from the
Okay.
Introducing
I gave it
Solids
to you.
workshop.
You haven't given it to me.
I bought one for you.
Okay, good. Okay, we can. Whoever wins that consult, you'll be getting that.
Yeah,
Also
and
the-
they could even swap it if they wanted to come to one of the workshops.
Okay, that's
Ah,
great.
that's good.
So I've got a workshop in Bondi Junction on the 22nd of October, and it's a 2-hour workshop where people get menu planners, shopping guides. I go through
Amazing.
a lot of information, but you can start adding fats into your baby's diet from like 5-6 months.
Wow.
Breast milk and formula is full of fat, the healthy
Well, yeah,
fat.
you should see the fat on the top of my milk. It's
Yeah.
like the
Cream,
dairy.
honey.
Exactly, and babies need that.
So one more question. We're going to get to.
Yeah.
Lauren's going to be pissed off that we're not answering the questions.
Okay.
But I've got one more because she's my guest.
I was just going to say, what about the cod liver oil?
Cod liver
Because
oil,
that
that
ties in
is-
with the fat, right?
Yeah, that ties in.
Yeah.
So we start cod liver.
Harry loves it. He loves it.
Me.
And that's what I was saying. It tastes disgusting.
Disgusting. I tried it. I was
Okay.
like, I can't.
So big hack, or like my tip is, everyone thinks we've got to disguise that cod liver oil. If you disguise it and then put a plate into your dishwasher, everything is going
Yeah.
to smell of that cod liver oil and it doesn't go anywhere. You put it directly with the drop into your baby's mouth. And I will say that I do love the Nordic Naturals baby DHA. It's a really good cod liver supplement.
My God, more things to do.
Slowly.
I'm already on. I'm just at the fat with the olive oil and now the cod liver. Okay, so my question is about how do you put a carbohydrate in with a solid or a baby-led solid weaning? How do you put a carbohydrate in?
So there's lots of different ways you can do it. First of all, very simple, easy, a wholemeal pasta. So either spelt pasta.
And you are telling me that the baby,
the little gums.
will be able to break that down.
Yes. So I know we've spoken about this, but some babies, Aaron, my son, only got his first tooth at 1. So if I delayed finger foods until 1.
Are you cooking this pasta till it's sloppy?
And just before it's breaking apart. But there are other ways. We've spoken about porridge. Porridge is a really good way to introduce babies, but it wouldn't be the first thing I'm introducing them to. And as we discussed, getting a whole
Like a regular one that you
regular
eat.
one, you can then bring it home, put it in a processor, grind it down, and make it with some coconut milk. Add some cinnamon to it. And if you are doing baby-led weaning, for example, you'd make it actually quite thick, so your baby can grab it with their hands.
Oh, so it's like when you overcook
exactly.
it.
And it gets all like almost like coagulates.
Yes.
It gets hard. And if you're using a spoon, you thin it out until your baby's consistency. But you can also use quinoa. I thought I had some
Quinoa flakes,
stuff.
you did.
Oh yes, I do. Here they are. So things like quinoa flakes. You can use rice flakes. And I do like variation.
It's time to bring the flavour to the babies.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
So we want to be more experimental, more creative, and we don't, if you look at these kiddie menus, I mean, I was just away in
Chicken
the Gold
nuggets,
Coast. It's
chips.
we're really not doing our babies a favour. They need to be eating. And
I
we've
love that
spoken
kids
about
menu sometimes though.
a lot of people do. But we also want them to be able to eat off the
Everything.
normal menu. And I know a lot of people, right from the beginning, take out the sugar, take out the salt, but literally your baby can eat. If you are
Anything.
following a clean diet and it's not, high in sodium and preservatives, your baby can. And we were talking about this from the book, the spaghetti bolognese, the
Like
shepherd's
literally
pie.
garlic, onion, herbs, flavours,
Totally.
tomato passata.
Totally.
Like your baby, because I'm not doing any of this, but I will.
Slowly.
Yeah, but it is. It's really hard to get your head around that because
Yeah.
that's like grown-up food and they've just come out of your womb.
So we,
Yeah,
well, probably not dancing as it come out of our womb.
No, but it feels like it. Yeah.
But when you start, so you'd start with single flavors, those purees or those single vegetables to start off with. And then from 6 months, when they've already been established on vegetables, the little bit of fruit if you want for a month or 6 weeks, then you start bringing in protein and like doing a slow cooked lamb goulash or slow cooked chicken tagine. And then you can use things like cumin and coriander and cinnamon.
He'll be on a Robin Josh in no time.
But actually the fish curry in the book,
Ooh.
that was the first time that I introduced my son to fish, was with that fish curry. Obviously there's no hot spices in it.
No.
It's coconut milk with a few like cinnamon and...
Because can you just put, like if you're we'll get to you. If you're putting some fish, because fish is an allergen and it's something you need to try, would you mash that with a sweet potato
Yes.
as well? You don't just go, here's some salmon.
Well, you could. What you could do is you could steam the salmon and give it to them in like small strips or
Yes.
flakes, and that's the baby-led weaning approach. You could do the salmon and millet rissoles, which I've got in the book, which are great finger
That
food.
sounds actually yummy. for
Or
me.
you could just mash it with sweet potato.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay, good.
So-
Okay, let's fire off because I feel like we're going to...
The bone broth is also another good one that you recommended.
Yes.
I
Bone
love
broth,
that
amazing.
with
Bone
with the pureed meat.
broth. Yeah, that's beautiful.
So a couple of girls, so Carly and Kaz, are struggling with the spitting out and the gagging still. Do they not like it? Is the baby trying to play with them?
It's very scary.
And
Yeah.
trying to get him to use chunkier food. Should I wait? This is an eight-month-old though
Yeah.
as well.
So if your baby is gagging and spitting out, I would try to do it. There's a few things that you can do. Getting a vibrating teething
Toy.
utensil or toy that's going to help stimulate some of those reflexes. Getting a toothbrush and brushing their
A
gums.
vibrating toothbrush or just a
No, a
regular?
regular toothbrush, like a baby toothbrush, and brushing the sides of their tongue, just so you're starting to stimulate those senses and working on that gag reflex. But the thing is, gagging and spitting up, it's all part of the process. But if your baby's doing it every single time and vomiting and it's becoming really interfering with every single mealtime, then we may need to look at it. But if they're doing it when they are being exposed to a new texture or a new taste,
That's
that is
normal.
very common because some children are just more aware, like they're more sensory. So it's kind of everything's heightened. The texture, something new, they feel it, they smell it, they taste it, and it's quite confronting. So we need to offer it again and again. So when you have that meal with a baby who's struggling with a certain texture, you'd have different components of the meal. So you'd start off with maybe those more complex textures or tastes, and then you'd have something that they are able to eat. So you're stretching them, but you're still having something within each meal that they are able to.
So you'd want a soft sweet potato in there if they were baby-led weaning to kind of...
Yeah, to make it a little bit easier. So
Yeah.
like what happened to you today with Little Fox. That turkey mince was a little bit intense and mixed with spinach and zucchini. Like not many of us.
I wouldn't like that.
So, but so you still, and you persevered, and probably, you got a little bit in, and then you gave it a break, and then you could have had something maybe that was a little bit easier for him, so that he could still
A
get
pear,
through the meal.
which is not the way to go.
But you could have had avocado, or you could have had, a vegetable pure, a medley, or
Yes.
something, an egg mashed with avocado, so that there was some component of the meal that you can have.
Yeah.
And if you think about when we sit down to have dinner, we have so many different things on our plate. Like if we just sat down and had 5 lamb chops and nothing else, we'd be like bored of it, right?
Yeah.
So we have a lamb chop, and then we have some steamed broccoli. We might then have some sweet potato wedges. We might have a hummus or tzatziki to dip things
Ah.
in. Dips are very, very nutritious and also a very good way to get the healthy
The
fats.
hummus.
Yeah, and
For the
tzatziki.
baby.
There's a homemade hummus.
Do we have any... Oh, okay, sorry.
So with some babies, the gagging and the spitting out, it can be indicative of some kind of oral motor delay.
Or it could be that it's gross.
It could be that it's gross, and then we just got to keep on offering it, because what is gross today with children may become a favorite 5 days later.
Right.
And even as they get older, you'll have a little kid that I don't eat avocado anymore, and then you got kind of telling everyone my kid doesn't eat avocado, and then they'll have a play date, and you'll go pick them up, and you'll say to the mom, "So what did you give my kid for lunch?" "Had an avocado sandwich." Yeah, he loved it. He asked for a second.
Yeah.
They're always changing. They like
Okay, so
weird
don't
little
give it
things.
up.
Don't give up. Repetition
Is key.
is key.
Okay, so we've got Brooke and Tina who are asking about how to prepare and introduce chicken and eggs.
Okay,
So
so
two.
eggs is an interesting one,
I
because
had a big
when
situation that was not...
In terms of the cooking processes as well.
the cooking. Okay, so we wouldn't offer raw or soft
Egg.
egg. You want it to be cooked through. But egg is one of those things where we actually do have to mix it with something in for the first taste, because it's if you ever eat an egg on its own, it can like really catch in your throat, and that
Remember that?
with nut butter, that can be a choking hazard.
Both of them have done that.
So when we introduce egg, first we introduce the yellow of the egg. Once we've introduced our baby to the yellow of the egg, like say 3 or 4 times, we then introduce to the white. So if they have a reaction,
You
we
know
know
which
which
part.
part.
So what, you boil it?
So you would boil it, or you could even fry it, like hard fry it or hard poach it. But you need to add the egg in with something. So a really good mix is egg, avocado, and bone broth. Such a huge nutrient hit for your baby. And you use the bone broth and
You
the
mush
avocado.
all
You mush
together?
it all together. And then later on you could do an
Game
omelette.
changer.
Yeah. And then later on you could do an omelette, and you could cut it into fine strips. So with chicken, I always advise, if you're going to do chicken, to go for the dark meat, because it's not as dry. The breast, a lot of people like the breast, but it's drier than the dark meat, and the dark meat contains more iron. You'd always remove the skin, and obviously you'd remove the bones. And in the beginning for babies, I love using a slow cooker. And at my workshop, I give out a recipe for a slow cooked chicken tagine. And in the Wholesome Child book, I'll show you this recipe I actually developed for my son, the chicken drumstick casserole. So that was his first taste of chicken, but I pureed it also. I did the chicken, and it has broccoli and pumpkin and corn. And what I did was I removed it off the bone, and then I pureed it up, and then mashed it, and then we ate it for dinner. So all of the recipes that I design, they can be given to a baby from 6-7 months, and also eaten for the whole family.
Okay.
But make sure you cook chicken through as well. Really important to cook it through. Make sure it's cooked.
And you can do that grilled or
You
steamed.
can do grilled. You can also do chicken healthy chicken nuggets from the book, which are dipped in an almond and rice, whole grain rice crumb or coconut flour crumb.
But what age is that for?
Again, from finger foods
Yeah.
from about 7 months. You can also just basically, you don't have time to do anything fancy or special. You can grill a piece of chicken. You can then puree it with vegetables, or you can cut it into strips and give it to your baby as finger food.
Unbelievable. Okay, next question.
Okay, there's a few people asking about the probiotics and everything. They want to know the brands again, so maybe you can put that.
Let's put that up somewhere.
Yeah, they also
Actually,
want.
and we'll give. So your tag is at Wholesome Child.
Yes.
So why don't we put on your stories afterwards
Some of
some of
Yeah.
those things?
People
Yeah.
want to know more where they can buy the book, where your workshops are in Melbourne, not Melbourne, just Sydney.
So they are. We had do go to Melbourne. We are planning the next workshops in Melbourne. In Sydney, there's one in Bondi Junction on the 22nd of October. You can go to wholesomechild.com. I've got all the workshop information up there, and you can book in. And there are only a few seats left for the 22nd. We are planning another Introducing Solids workshop in November in Manly, because I've got a lot of people who've been begging for one in Manly. We will also be going to Perth. There's workshops for fussy eating, for lunchbox solutions. But on my website, I have a lot of recipes for babies, a lot of what we're talking about. I've got a few articles in the blog section, but all the information and everything we're speaking about is in the Wholesome Child
And
book.
it's not just for children; it's for babies.
It's for babies and it's for adults. And I've actually been doing workshops in old age retirement homes using the book, because it's just grounded
Nutrient
basic
dense.
information.
Yeah.
It's no fads, achievable. And the book can be purchased off my website, but also from Booktopia, Dimox, Berkelo Books. But we actually are running out of books, and we've ordered the third
congrats.
print run, so
Wow.
it's very exciting. Yeah.
Okay, good. Do we
Okay,
have more?
yeah, more questions, a lot of questions.
Okay, yeah, good.
So quite a few
Yeah,
people
okay.
asking about kind of Let It Be is wondering, she's very busy, and does she need to feed her little boy lunch? He's a hungry little boy, but does she need to feed him lunch every day? Does she need to do 3 feeds? But I'm not sure how old he is.
Yeah, we need
Is
to know
this?
how old.
Is it Let It Be?
Mm.
I know how old he is.
How old is?
He is 1 day older than Fox.
Ah,
Okay.
so it's just over 7 months.
Yeah,
So-
7.5.
So from 7.5 months, we really do want to establish structure, and babies thrive on structure. So I would be advising that, if at all possible, to be giving your baby lunch every single day. And there are some time-saving hacks which we've spoken about.
Yes.
You don't have to cook
I don't know if we
from
did-
scratch.
We do, yeah. So we're going to be giving away
Okay.
these great silicone containers from Munchkin. You get 4 in a pack. We'll give a few of them away to whoever wins. These you make bulk.
Yeah,
So you
exactly.
can actually do in this as well meat and then veggies, like stack them up on
Yeah.
top. So
Yeah.
you do like a big cook up,
Yeah.
and then this is a meal,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you defrost the whole meal.
Yeah, and that is, so batch cooking is a lifesaver for anyone who is busy, and there's no, I don't know any mothers lately who aren't busy. You don't know what's going to come up on a day. And we can't just cook everything on that day.
It's impossible.
It's impossible, especially if you want to, cook, preservative free, and you don't want to rely on everything processed. So I really suggest doing big batches. So like the chicken drumstick casserole that I showed
Yes.
previously, make that whole thing up and then freeze it into small portions.
Because that's your veggies and your protein
It's
all in
everything.
once.
It's everything, and that's where you move away from things being a bit bland. So if we always have a protein and 2 veggies and a carbohydrate, it's kind of a bland. We want to start making shepherd's pie, spaghetti bolognese, but we don't have time during the week to do everything. So choose 2 recipes on the weekend and make it up in bulk. And then every weekend, if you do 2 recipes, you actually start to create a stockpile in your freezer. And the other thing we spoke about when I started introducing solids, I had my BFF, Nans, if you're watching, hello, and we cooked everything together. So I go, right, I'm doing quinoa porridge, and I'm doing the chicken drumstick casserole, and I'll do the easy fish curry, and I'll do spaghetti bolognese, and then we'd halve the meals
Yeah.
and share. So I was only actually cooking 2 or 3 fresh meals a week, but then I was ending up with 6 or 7
Amazing.
that I would rotate.
Yeah, and that's happy baby.
And also, you can't always take an easy shortcut, like taking a can of sardines. Everyone tunes in those.
I love
canned
sardines.
But taking a can of sardines and an avocado and going on a play date and opening the can, if you're going to do canned sardines, you want it to be in spring water, no added salt, not in brine, not in vegetable oil, and you can get the Brunswick sardines, which are wild and cost they're so inexpensive. Mix that, mash that with avocado, and that's a meal.
That's great.
And
That's
then
what you want, hacks like that.
you want easy hacks, or a boiled egg mashed with avocado. It doesn't always have to be an elaborate
cooked
meal. You know, it can be simple in the beginning, and then having an banana for dessert. If you've got steamed vegetables from the night before, that's what always make extra. So you've got those leftovers.
Yes.
I always talk about multitasking. You know, in my home, everything gets multitasked. So if we have dinner, it's in the lunchbox. The next day,
of course.
if I've got leftover sweet potato, the kids are getting sweet potato pikelets for breakfast, and that's another really good one that Fox can be having.
Okay, so Marto has got a really cute picture of him and his baby.
Oh.
Would like to know how big is a surf for an 8-month-old?
How big is it?
Serve. That's such a good question.
And just on that as well, then just Miss Kylo also wants to know the ratio of introducing milk. I mean, when you introduce solids, getting rid of the milk.
Okay.
How does that work?
Okay, so I'm going to answer two separately. So asking about serves, it's a very interesting one, and I actually really don't like parents to get caught up on
Serves.
how big is a serve. Every single baby is going to have a different appetite, and you read in a book that your baby should be having 4 tablespoons of sweet potato puree when you start introducing solids, for example, and you go to introduce solids to your baby and they only want 1 tablespoon, that's going to make you feel anxious, and you're going to start forcing them. Then you may have another baby where after 4 tablespoons, like, hello, I want more. And
That's
you're
my
like,
child.
scared
What do you
to
do?
overfeed.
Just like,
and you get them more sweet
but
potato.
he will never stop eating.
Well, we have to start to regulate their own appetites, and he may have 2 serves, maybe a third, but he will stop.
Okay.
So as parents, it's our responsibility to offer good, clean, healthy choices to decide when. So we pick the structure, but it's actually up to our children to decide. So studies show us that healthy weight children have parents who honour and respect their natural hunger cues. So they're not trying to reduce the amount they're eating, and they're not trying to increase.
Okay.
So and you know, babies, some days they may be teething, they may be under the weather, they may be constipated, they may not be hungry, and on one day they may eat a small amount, and the next day they're like ferocious animals, like, you know, shoving it in their mouth. So we've got to just really go
It's like
with
us.
it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Next.
The milk.
So milk again. So milk is very. Everybody has a different relationship towards milk. There are a lot of parents that are just, you know, a demand feeding. So we start to reduce those feeds by about 6-7 months. When your baby is properly established on solid foods, you start to go from, you know, 6 to 7 feeds, you drop it down to 4 feeds, and then down to 3 feeds. It's always about choosing the feed that your baby is not so attached to and starting to drop them.
Okay.
So, for example, a lot of people wouldn't drop that night feed, or they wouldn't drop the 5 a.m.
Yeah.
You know, so you do a mid-morning or mid-afternoon feed, and we spoke about that. In about 7.5-8 months, you're dropping that mid-afternoon, that mid-morning feed, and that's when the snack would be established.
Okay. What time is it? Just
And when does
also?
it?
Any time? Ben, you got time?
10:40.
Okay, fine. Let's keep going.
And when does it entirely replace the solid feed?
So when do solids completely?
You got one job.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I know what you
Yeah.
mean. Okay, so babies need to have milk up until the age of 1.
Okay. How many times a day?
So from about 8 to 12 months, we go down to 2.
Okay.
From 9 to 12 months, you can go down to 2.
It's happening.
But again, you know, it's just different formulas, different babies.
I know.
No, you don't have to. The only problem with breastfeeding arises when you are overfeeding and the milk is replacing the natural appetite. Okay,
Well, that's why you do the solids first, right?
So up until the age of 6 months, you always introduce milk first and then food. So your milk is more important. That is where your babies are getting most of their nutrients from the milk. And when you are starting introducing salt, giving your baby a little bit of pumpkin or sweet potato, they're really not getting that nutrition from it. You're kind of just giving the necessary skills needed to start to eat solid foods. But from 6 months, breast milk, especially breast milk and formula, can no longer satisfy all your baby's requirements. So not their iron or their vitamin A, etc. So you need to introduce those iron-rich foods, and then you would be introducing solids first and waiting half an hour, 45 minutes, and then giving them their milk feed.
Oh, you don't give the milk feed straight after the solids?
You can. It sounds like your baby's got an amazing appetite.
He does.
So you actually can, but I would stretch it out just to make sure that he's not going to start to not eat to his full potential because he wants the milk. So it is good to have that gap, also to let him digest his food, then offer it 45 minutes later.
Okay.
And then by the age of 1, from a nutritional perspective, your baby doesn't require milk anymore. They do require calcium and nutrient-dense food. But for a lot of breastfeeding mothers, and the Australian Breastfeeding Association would definitely advocate continuing breastfeeding.
Just till 2?
Till 2 or until your baby gets the milk. Some babies just show you when they've had enough milk, and there are mothers that go on longer, but it's a very personal decision as to when to stop breastfeeding.
Okay.
Jana would love to know how much fat do you recommend per serve?
So again, I would talk about having fat as part of every meal. Measuring it out, so it would be a cube of avocado, half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of coconut in their purees. Using those healthy fats to create your food. A drizzle of olive oil. I really want parents to move away from measuring. It's not about a quantity, it's a drizzle, it's a teaspoon, a tablespoon.
Would you be putting your nut butters in there?
Absolutely. So nut butters, we in the past we would only introduce peanuts at the age of 1. Now we introduce nut butters from 5-6 months. You can start to introduce nuts and seeds.
And just note on that, like water it down because
it's glaggy.
Yeah, they will gag on that.
So it's glaggy, so you can absolutely boiled and cooled water to just water it down, and using seeds, so using pumpkin seeds, using chia seeds, sunflower seeds, almond meal in your food, in your cooking, in your rissoles to bind is going to add those healthy fats.
Okay. Jay Jag would love to know what is best.
Okay.
Sonoma.
There's Sonoma. So, and as you remember at the workshop, I showed a lot of times, babies get to a stage where they just want what you're eating. So if you're eating a sandwich, you're just going to break some off and give it to them. You're not there yet, but you'll get there. And having those healthy states, so having a good quality bread is really important. At my workshop, I show a wrap, which is a whole grain wrap, and it's full of preservatives which are banned in food for infants. So we really want to look for quality breads, and I love sourdough breads, spelt sourdough breads, Sonoma, ancient grains, healthy bake.
Do you want to avoid like a soybean seed because of that size of seeds?
It's not necessary to avoid that, but a lot of the soy and linseed breads that are out at the moment or in the supermarket, they have a lot of other ingredients, added gluten and preservatives.
Let's say you've got a Sonoma loaf. It doesn't have to be just sourdough.
No, and getting them used to those seeds is really good because you get to a point where children only want bread with seeds. It's fine offering them with those little seeds or
and you can give it to them now because from 6 months on because they supposedly mash them with their gums.
So Zon's very shocked at their gums, and I'm telling you they can.
I know.
Have you ever put your finger into Fox's mouth? And
I put my nipple in his mouth.
And here's the thing: when their babies get their front teeth, you actually don't use those front teeth to chew. And they only get those later on. So we definitely don't want to. We really don't want to delay the introduction of textured and finger foods because that's the leading cause, one of the leading causes of food refusal later on.
Yes. We've got CATES, not really a name, but it's nice for them to know that their questions come up finally. How do I get my 14-month-old to eat veggies and meat? She only likes white carbs.
Don't we all, honey?
So again, it's coming back to repetition, but for you, I really recommend getting hold of a Wholesome Child book, because there's a whole chapter on fussy eating with lots of tips and tricks, and there's a lot of recipes which have the meat and have the vegetables added into the recipes. But I've really worked on textures and with fussy eaters in mind. So they're the recipes that I use for fussy eaters to encourage them and to stretch their tree. And I do have the fussy eating workshop at the end of the month.
There's a lot of fussy eaters here.
To come along, and I go through everything.
Spitting, not gagging, just spitting.
So spitting. Spitting the food out. If they are spitting out the food again, only occasionally when a new food's offered, that's pretty normal, and we just go along with repetition. But if they are spitting out, so what some babies do is they take the food in, they suck it, and then they spit it out, and that could be a problem with that suck and swallow coordination. So we just need to watch that, and if it continues, again, that's a time like check in with a ped or a speech therapist, just to make sure that all those oral motor skills and chewing
It's like we've all made it so far. We all eat. Don't they just figure it out?
Do you know what? That is, for the majority of children, that is true. But there is a myth. The myth is that eating is easy. Eating is actually one of those complex tasks that our human bodies will perform. It requires 8 sensory systems, 26 cranial nerves, and for some children, it's really a difficult, and we need to support them. And these are the children that do end up at the age of 10 just being on white diets, and nobody knows why, but they actually don't have the skills needed. So we've got a lot more information to do to help babies and to help children who need the support. Most children, they won't need it, and most children will go through a fussy eating stage and they will come through it. But it's the strategies we implement and it's how we manage it that really dictate how quickly and easily they come through it. And these things, they might sound, oh wow, an oral motor issue, but sometimes it's just 1 or 2 appointments with a therapist and just stimulating the right
parts of the mouth.
Exactly. And they can switch things on. I had a 3-year-old boy who came to see me a while ago, and all he was eating was Lowen's muesli and Weet-Bix. He was 3 years old, but he was also getting Pediasure, so he was thriving and he was growing. And the mother was continually told, he's okay, he's growing, he'll grow out of it. I wasn't happy. There were some things that came up, and I sent this mother to a speech therapist that I work with, and straight away a tongue tie was So this little boy actually didn't have the skills needed to eat more complex foods.
Wow.
And had been missed. And I've had, just sometimes we just need to investigate a little bit further, because often there's a reason it can be really easily fixed, but if we don't look for it, we
miss it.
Yeah.
Let's take a couple more and then we'll wrap up.
One thing we haven't talked about is dairy. So there's been a couple of dairy questions. And I know that you support the goat's milk. Is that
dairy?
Yes.
Yeah. Is that why is that as well?
Okay. So dairy, up until the age of 1, from a nutritional perspective, your baby doesn't need dairy because they're getting all the calcium they need from the breast milk or the formula. But a lot of people want to introduce dairy because it, gives you more options. It makes things creamy, and a lot of people like dairy in their diets. So I always recommend starting with a sheep's milk or a goat's milk dairy product. And obviously a yogurt is the best place.
That's Meredith dairy.
So
I've got it in the
we have
fridge
Meredith
right
here.
now.
It's easier on the digestive system because the protein molecules are more similar to our breast milk than cow's milk. Cow protein molecules are a little bit bigger. There's also a lot of sensitivities to dairy. So for a lot of babies who are suffering from reflux or stomach issues or constipation, the two main culprits are usually dairy and wheat. So we generally are mindful of dairy, and we remove it from a diet if there's allergies present or if there's reflux, and we would start to slowly introduce it and go for a softer alternative to cow's dairy.
But it's not necessary until over the age of 1.
It's over the age of 1. So what we want to do is make sure that our babies and our children are getting calcium. So yogurt is one of the best sources of calcium from dairy, but there are other non-dairy sources of calcium such as sesame seeds, sardines with the bone, salmon with the bone, legumes, leafy greens. They're all going to contribute to your baby's calcium intake. But I would really recommend using an unflavoured yogurt.
Soz, everybody. We went over an hour. Hey,
Wait till they rejoin.
are they rejoining?
Do we have to tell them to rejoin?
This, right there. There's only
Hang on,
like
Benji's
3
just
people.
directing us.
There's only 9.
The live specialist.
Sorry.
Is it safe to defrost in the microwave? That was a good question.
Oh, that's a really good
Yeah.
question. And using microwaves.
That's every day.
So we will just do a couple more questions
Okay.
and then wrap up.
Okay.
But we are going to choose the best question. Benji's been entering lots of questions, so I hope you can win the Munchkin pack.
Oh, is that why you're doing it? I should do it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just. Benji said a really great question.
No,
was-
someone asked it before.
Someone asked.
Defrosting in the microwave.
Yes.
So, look, it is safe if you do it properly, but I would prefer to, especially if it's meat, to take it out the night before, put it in the fridge, defrost it in the fridge overnight, and then heat it up to boiling, and then it'll cool back down to room temperature before.
So always heat the meat
to boiling,
and then drop.
let it cool down.
Veggies doesn't really matter. does it?
Veggies are a lot safer, but
Okay.
when you've got meat or any kind of animal product, so if there's dairy in there or fish or egg, then you really need to be careful how you defrost
And go boiling.
and go. Yeah, absolutely.
And dairy we were just talking about, so
Yeah.
that's fine. So a yogurt,
So I was just going to
sheep's
say
or
a sheep's milk, and really try to avoid sweetening that yogurt. Yogurt is the best
it's so
opportunity.
yummy. You don't need to.
Yeah, but yogurt is such a great opportunity to teach your baby to enjoy sour foods. Okay, so it's like the best, that fermented flavour. If you straight away go and sweeten it because they turn up their little noses, it's okay. Just try again a few more times.
Wednesday
and
or
get the hang of
Friday.
it. Exactly.
Every second day.
And not sweetening it with apple or pear or something.
And we can do that late. We can do that when they drop that feed.
Yeah, you can
bring
do it
through
when you're
and
ready.
snack.
There's no necessity. It's not like introducing iron-rich foods, which
Sure.
you have to do by about 6 months.
Okay. Anything we've missed?
Yeah.
Desperados.
Is it possible to puree a well done ribeye steak?
Oh, that's Mitch.
Oh.
Is it? But it's is eating as smart
Oh,
as
him.
Mitch.
He's talking
He's
about. he said
asking.
quarter
He's
pounder
asking
before.
again.
Well, you'd have to have a very
Mitch, stop
strong
it.
processor.
But we did process I feel it into
Yeah,
a
you
ground.
can into a
Oh,
ground.
is that why he
Yeah,
asked?
yeah.
Is there anything else, or should we wrap it up? Any
You
desperados
know,
out there?
a couple of people asked earlier, is it okay if if a full-grown adult, that was the word, eats the leftover food?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And use those purees to make a sweet potato.
Was it?
No, stop reading Mitch, stop being silly bugger. Okay, so just going to show you a couple of things. If you're going to be in the pack, spoons. We'll always have two,
Yes,
right, when you
absolutely.
feed.
You're even 3 because they're going to land up on the floor.
Bowls. So this one turns white when it's too hot.
Excellent.
And then we've got, this is your favourite cup.
Yeah, so these are the miracle cups. So they don't have a
That's a really good
stopper.
question. Someone asked about this.
Yeah, and so the baby, just a little bit of liquid just leaks out any side. So the miracle cups are the kind of the go-to cups at the moment. You can also get ones with a straw, like the
Yes, I like the
Mag.
Mag.
So that's also a good one. So what you'd do is first of all you'd give this to your baby to play with, so they get the hang of it and they're going to eat it all over, like chew on it. And then you'd put in, like I said, literally a tablespoon of water, just so that
And then it
they
won't
start-
mess everything
Yeah,
up.
just to get a hang of it, and as they can start to manage that, you go up to 30 mils and then to 40 mils, and it's a really good one. I love this one.
And now this is the little feeder.
Yes.
So when you're very scared like me, you can put in a piece of food in there, close it up, and then the baby sucks it through, which is a great way to start things that are hard, like watermelon
Absolutely.
and fruits like that.
And it gives you confidence. And as I said to Zoe, generally you'll do that for a week or two.
And you'll be
then
so sick of cleaning it.
Yeah, exactly. So then but it just gets that confidence up.
Yeah, so that's all going to
Yeah.
be in your pack, and a consult with Mandy and a book. So, thank you.
Thank you,
It was
Zoe.
so awesome. I hope it's safe so I can put it somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people have asked you to save it.
Yeah, I tried, everyone. The phone is about to die, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
Someone said you're a beautiful mum, you're so strong and a really beautiful person.
Aw.
It was Mitch again.
Thank you, Dave.
It was not.
I'm going to